Can you imagine what it's like to live your life without having a single thought? I can tell you it's a very peaceful feeling. It's so peaceful, in fact, that I don't think I've ever experienced something like it before. And of course, to be without thought forever is impossible, right? I don't think anyone, no matter how spiritually advanced they are, has never had a thought in their life. Even after experiencing awakening, enlightenment, nirvana, self-realization, whatever you want to call it. We're always going to have thoughts, right? Those old behaviors and thoughts will still find the way to creep up, even if they're just in the form of shadows, even if they're only in the form of remnants. But as you continue to become aware of your thoughts, as you continue to observe them, and more importantly, as you continue to dissociate yourselves from them, that is when true peace and joy can be found. When you can do an activity and not have a single thought come up, or if it does come up, to be so quickly removed from it that it feels like it wasn't even there to begin with. That is true freedom. That is true liberation. Now, this state of kind of no thought or not thinking when working is of course a very common idea, right? It's not something that, we're talking about existing today, right? This is something that has existed in ancient spiritual teachings. You probably have heard it, if you're into Eastern philosophy, you've probably heard of the concept Wu Wei, or the state of no mind, the state of flow, right? Be like water, because water is not rigid, water flows. Depending on the shape of the river, depending on the shape of kind of wherever the water is flowing through, the water will also flow in that nature. So if you rearrange the rocks in the river, the water will also rearrange itself because it's flexible, it's malleable, it adjusts to the circumstances. And it doesn't have kind of a stubborn way of doing things. It will go with the flow, but it's also very powerful as well, right? Water can be very gentle and peaceful and yielding, but water can also be very forceful, strong, and almost deadly sometimes, right? We see a lot in the case of floods and tsunamis and currents and hurricanes, etc., how strong water can be. But let's take a moment to examine the softer elements of water. And let's see if we can apply our own life to be more like water, to be more flexible, to be thoughtless. Now, the word thoughtless has kind of a negative connotation, right? That was so thoughtless of you, someone might say. You didn't think beforehand before you did that, right? But in a spiritual sense, thoughtless has kind of an opposite meaning. It's a state of no mind, like you literally do not have a thought. You're not bothered by what you have to do. You're not bothered by how someone hurt you in the past. You're not bothered by what will happen tomorrow or next week and so on and so forth. You're just simply at peace. And I know this can be very hard and difficult to try to accept in the beginning. But if you're watching this video, chances are that you've probably already experienced something like this, right? These videos, obviously, they don't necessarily appeal to everyone. And that's okay. It's all a matter of where you are in your spiritual journey. Some folks might not be there yet, and that's fine. They're just going to take a little bit longer to go on that journey. But if you've already been into spirituality, if you've already kind of noticed and experienced a good degree of life, you'll know that the less you think about things, the less you worry about things, the less you try to micromanage and plan everything, the more smoothly everything will flow. And that's because life itself has a natural current like the river. If we can surrender to that natural current, to that natural flow, we will go to the places that we need to go. Right? It's like if I told you, stop your heart from beating right now. You and I have no control over that. The body and the heart is just continuing to pump blood to our organs, to our muscles, to our body. And this is something that is beyond our control. There is something that is much higher than, kind of the limited window of control that we have. So we trust our heart to keep us alive. Why not trust life to keep us alive? Why not trust life to take us where we need to go, to do the things that we need to do? Us stressing and worrying about it more often than not doesn't change the outcome. It only makes it worse because it fogs up our mind. Instead of having a clear and transparent mind that is able to do anything and to solve any problem, we instead clutter up and fill up that mind with useless thoughts and worries. Thoughts and worries that prevent us from actually solving the solution at hand. It's interesting and also a little bit unfortunate, actually. A few days ago, my wife and I were home with our daughter, and she happened to put in her mouth one of those little kind of wallflower air fresheners with the little wick attached to it. And we hadn't noticed it, actually. So it wasn't like it was intentionally put there, but somehow it fell off the table, and she put that in her mouth, and she immediately started vomiting. And of course, for my wife and I, this being our first kid and this being our first experience of this kind, we didn't know what to do. But instead of panicking, instead of worrying, we just decided, okay, let's have a clear mind. Okay, she vomited. We need to figure out what we need to do, right? So we called poison control. We figured out what we need to do. We spoke with professionals, and thankfully she was fine. Nothing happened. But after the whole sort of scare, I thought to myself, this could have been handled a lot worse, right? If we did panic, if we were overcome with grief or worry or stress, maybe we would have delayed. Maybe we wouldn't have done the right decision. Maybe something could have happened, right? And so I'm always thankful for the times that, no matter how stressful the situation can be, to just level set everything, right? Just take a deep breath. Everything will be solved. Everything will be done accordingly. Of course, there's times where you do need to act with urgency, and that prevents us from kind of thinking clearly and smoothly. But more often than not, whether it is an emergency or a situation that needs immediate attention, if you have a clear mind, you will arrive at the answer faster than you would otherwise. So it's a matter of kind of cultivating this thoughtless mind, this mind that is capable of dealing with any input, dealing with any challenge, dealing with any stimuli. And this is something that obviously needs to be nurtured over time. It's not like, something can happen today and then tomorrow, all of a sudden, you have kind of this clear, thoughtless mind. It starts by tackling each thought at a time and following each thought back to its source and sort of questioning, practicing introspection, asking yourself, where is this thought coming from? Why is it coming from? Why am I attached to it? Right? If someone said something to me a few weeks ago, why does it still bother me? Why am I still holding on to it? It reminds me a little bit of that Buddhist story. You may have heard of this, where two Buddhist monks were walking, and they stumbled upon this beautiful young lady who was trying to cross the river. And this young lady called out to the monks to help her, and she asked if they could help transport her across the river. And the first monk said, "Sure, why not? Yeah, we can definitely help you cross this river." And the second monk, who was his friend, immediately looked at him, bewildered, and pulled him aside and said, "What are you doing? What do you mean we can help her? You know that per our monastic traditions and way of life, we're not allowed to touch women, let alone look at them. So how could you do this? And what's wrong with you?" And so the other monk kind of calmed him down, said, "Don't worry, we're helping out this young lady in distress." And so that monk went ahead. He asked the young lady for permission, picked her up, and gently carried her across the river, put her down, and then went his own way with his colleague. And hours went by, and you could tell that the other monk, the one that did not lift the lady, was clearly upset. His mood was sour. And so the one who did pick up the young lady turned to him and said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Well, I can't believe you touched that lady. I can't believe you broke one of the most fundamental rules of our way of life." And the monk just replied to him, smiling, saying, "I dropped that lady over there by the river hours ago, but you are the one who is still holding on to her. You are the one who is still attached to her. You are the one that is still clinging on to the thought of her." And this is such a beautiful story about attachment, about thoughts, about letting go, right? Obviously, one can argue whether or not that monk should have picked up that lady or not, but clearly the second monk didn't do any better because he was still thinking about it. He was still dwelling on it. And it affected his mood, whereas the other one had simply moved on. It was as if that act of lifting the lady didn't even occur to him. So that's what you want to be. You don't want to be attached to your thoughts. You don't want to be attached to past experiences. You want to kind of live each day fresh, new, clean, blank slate. Because this is the way where you can actually progress. This is the way where you can actually achieve true happiness. If you open up our minds right now, and if there was a way to scientifically show every single thought that we have, well, then our minds are completely full. And I mean full of just pointless thoughts. It's like if you open up a vacuum cleaner, right? And you see all of the hair, all of the lint, all of the dust, everything, right? You have to kind of take that bag and throw it out, or you have to empty out the cartridge that stores all of the things that you're vacuuming. But instead, we keep vacuuming and vacuuming, and we think, we're wondering why the vacuum is not picking up things from the ground anymore. Well, it's because the cartridge is full. We need to actually go out and empty it, right? A vacuum is only useful if the cartridge is empty, if it actually has something that it can vacuum it to. But our minds are like the vacuum where the cartridge is full. We never take the time to clear things out. We never take the time to remove things out so that new things can come, so that better things can come. Instead of thinking about what someone said to you 3-4 weeks ago, or in some cases 3-4 years ago, why not learn a new habit? Why not practice a new way of living? Why not be more grateful? Manifest positive things? Why not practice affirmations? Why not meditate more? Why not practice, the art of letting go? Fill your mind with those things. Fill your mind with things that will actually help you develop as a human being, as a soul living within a human being. So I want to, kind of refocus things back again and just kind of talk a little bit more about this idea of being thoughtless, this idea of not having any thoughts bog you down. Of course, as I mentioned at the onset, there will always still be thoughts. You can never get rid of thoughts. And candidly, you should never try, because the more you try, the more you will actually create more thoughts, perhaps without you even knowing that you're creating more thoughts. The key is to just observe those thoughts. Observe them, and over time, you will realize how pointless they actually are, how much they don't really serve you, how much they're just like a story or a narrative that's playing that, your ego is trying to develop and spurn and create, in order to create some sort of an entertainment for itself. But even though it might seem boring, even though it might seem too calm or too passive for you, there's great joy in that, right? If you want life to be exciting, if you want life to be full of action, recognize that a lot of the times that will come with a lot of thoughts. That will come with a lot of storytelling and narratives and mental traps. Whereas the peaceful life, although it can sometimes feel mundane and repetitive and slow and passive, it's actually the lifestyle that will bring you the most joy. Many of the times we don't realize this in our youth. And even then, in old age or in older age, we still might not realize it. But generally speaking, the older we get, the more we realize that those thoughts are useless, right? Those thoughts of resentment, those thoughts of jealousy, those thoughts of envy, those thoughts of ambition, those thoughts of greed, those thoughts of feeling like you're not enough. Those are all not going to help you live a better life. We spend so much time, we spend so much energy, and it's fascinating too. Recently I've been trying to understand a little bit more about the thoughts of thinking to our physiological changes to our body, how that affects our body, right? Because it's all connected. There's no such thing as mental, physical, they're all related. And so what you think can actually transpire into your body. And I've noticed this myself. I've kind of experimented recently, probably it's been a couple of weeks now, where I'm trying to kind of let things go. Things that were bothering me, things that were perhaps on my mind, and I was dwelling on it for too much, like the monk was about his friend picking up the young lady. I was dwelling on things for a while. But ever since I started to kind of let things go more, I noticed that I was actually more relaxed. My body was less tense. I had less knots in my body, believe it or not. More importantly, I noticed that I was able to sleep deeper and longer. Even though I sometimes sleep quite late, 12, 1 o'clock, I noticed that I still woke up the next morning feeling rested. So that whole notion of you got to get 8 hours of sleep, well, you got to get 8 hours of sleep, but you also have to have quality sleep. If you get 8 hours, but you go to bed full of thoughts, full of anxieties, full of worries, then chances are that 8 hours is not enough. But let's say you get 6 hours, but those 6 hours are, you enter very deep stages of sleep. Well, then you will wake up feeling restored, refreshed, light, peaceful, joyful. And so I've noticed even how it's affected my quality of sleep. So I encourage you all to just, take some time to reflect and take some time to really explore this, because I think this is something that, candidly, we can spend a lot more time on. And I know I've done, quite a few videos on this whole notion of observing our thoughts, but I've never really taken it one step further, which is, well, what does that actually mean? What does that actually entail? Where will that ultimately take me? And the answer to that is it will take you to a place of no thought, of no mind. Just even now, for example, while I was setting up the camera equipment to record this video, I had thoughts in my mind of, oh, is this the right time to do it? It's a little bit noisy outside. Maybe things won't, maybe I'm not as prepared as I need to be, right? Just useless thoughts, pointless thoughts. And not thoughts, that were coming from a place of no mind, but were coming from a place from a full mind. And once I sat down and pressed record, things just started flowing. I didn't have to worry. I didn't have to think. I didn't have to do anything. So, just try to practice this notion of no mind. And it will start slow. It will start gradual. Don't be too hard on yourself if you're not in a state where you're just flowing and peaceful and gentle. Just treat it one day at a time, one moment at a time, one meditation at a time, one introspection at a time. And see for yourself what a transformational change this will bring to your life. I promise you will live a completely different life once you start to let go of these things, once you start to worry less, once you start to just have a clear and empty mind. And to put a bow on things, when we see our life as just our life, as just this person, right? This name, Najim's life, that is when the stress and worries come. But if we see our life, as all of existence, well, then we don't have personal agendas. We don't have goals. We don't have ambitions. We don't have thoughts. We don't have a past. We don't have a future. We are simply that. And that's what I want to leave you guys with. This notion that you are that. You are beyond any sort of labels, thoughts, and ideas. You are that. And that is what no mind really means. When you push the mind aside, that is when you reveal your true essence. That is when the light of your soul can actually shine through. So see if you can push this mind aside. It's there, it's valuable, right? As I mentioned, it's helping our heart beat, it's helping us solve daily tasks. But do all of these things from a state of no mind. Do all of these states from a state of being present, being fully in the moment. Because when we're present, we're not swept into the ideas of the past and future. We're not swept into worries, thoughts, anxieties, right? The minute you are anxious about something, you're automatically projecting yourself into the future. The minute you're worried about something, you're thinking about the future. The minute you're dwelling on something, you're thinking about the past. And so you're not here now. And that is what I want us to focus on. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I encourage you to please check out some of the other videos on this channel and like them and subscribe to them if you are interested in following and receiving more content like this. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time.